This is Paris, and he's just made the worst dinner guest decision in human history. Paris was a Trojan prince visiting Sparta, and his host, King Menelaus, was showing him the typical ancient Greek hospitality. Wine, food, the works. Paris couldn't stop staring at his wife, Helen, who happened to be legendarily beautiful. So what does Paris do? He runs off with Helen back to Troy. Now, some versions say Helen went willingly, others say she was abducted, but what we know for sure, Menelaus was pissed. But he couldn't just storm Troy by himself. Why, you ask? Because Troy was a fortified city across the Aegean Sea with massive walls and a powerful army. So he needed backup. Serious backup. But Menelaus had an ace up his sleeve. Years earlier, Helen had so many suitors that they'd all sworn an oath to protect whoever married her. So Menelaus called in that favor, and suddenly he had an alliance in Greek kingdoms with bigwigs like Agamemnon, Achilles, and Odysseus ready to sail to Troy. Over 1,000 ships, tens of thousands of warriors, all because one guy stole another guy's wife. But would it actually work? The war lasted 10 years, but Troy's massive walls were impenetrable and every attack failed, so the Greeks pretended to give up. They burned their camps, sailed away, and left behind a massive wooden horse on the beach. It was taller than the city gates and beautifully built, a gift seemingly offered to the goddess Athena for good fortune on their voyage home. The Trojans found it the next morning and wheeled it into the city walls as a trophy of victory. But while they celebrated at night, soldiers hiding in the horse climbed out and opened the gates to more Greeks who had actually come back in the dead of night. So by the time the sun was rising, Troy was engulfed in flames. Meet Leonor Teles. Leonor was married to King Fernando I of Portugal, which should have made her popular. But there was a problem. Before marrying Fernando, she had been married to someone else. But before that marriage, she'd allegedly had an affair with a prominent nobleman. And during her marriage to Fernando, rumors swirled about another affair with a Galician count named Juan Fernandez de Angero. Portuguese nobles were keeping track of all this like it was a medieval gossip column. So when King Fernando died in 1383, Leonor became regent for their daughter Beatrice. But her romantic history came back to haunt her. The Portuguese nobility despised Leonor, partly because of those affairs, and partly because she'd immediately positioned her alleged lover, Angero, as her chief advisor. So they saw an opportunity. Fernando's illegitimate half-brother, John, could potentially claim the throne instead. But they needed a spark, something to justify open rebellion against the queen regent. That spark came when John personally assassinated Angero in the royal palace. John literally walked into a royal council meeting and killed the queen's alleged lover in front of everyone, then declared himself the defender of the realm. Now, the question was, would the Portuguese people back the queen who'd scandalized them with affairs, or the illegitimate prince who just committed murder? The country split. Leonor had the backing of Castile, a kingdom she'd already married Beatrice off to, but John had popular support and the backing of Portuguese cities tired of foreign influence. So, like clockwork, war started. The war lasted 2 years. Major battles, sieges, diplomatic chaos. John won, founding a new royal dynasty that would rule Portugal for the next 200 years. All triggered by the queen's very rich love life and the jealousy and gossip it sparked in the entire kingdom. This is Philomelus, and he's just received the worst news possible. His little city-state has been fined more money than it could make in a century. Philomelus was a military commander from Phocis, a small Greek city-state that was usually pretty unremarkable. But the Amphictyon Council, basically the religious United Nations of ancient Greece, had just slapped Phocis with a massive fine for cultivating sacred land. But here's the thing, that charge was probably trumped up. The council was dominated by another city-state, Thebes. And Thebes had beef with Phocis. Why the beef? A generation earlier, a Theban politician had accused a Phocian leader of seducing his wife. The scandal had humiliated Thebes politically, and they'd been looking for revenge ever since. So, the fine? It was payback for a decades-old affair. Philomelus knew Phocis couldn't pay, so he made a wild decision. If they were going to be punished for violating sacred land anyway, why not actually violate it? He marched and seized the Oracle of Delphi, the most sacred site in Greece, and used its treasury to hire a massive mercenary army. But here's the catch. You can't just steal from the god's temple without consequences. Every Greek city-state that cared about religious law, which was most of them, by the way, now had justification to attack Phocis. The war exploded across Greece. Athens joined Phocis, Sparta got involved, Thebes led the opposition, and then Philip II of Macedon saw an opportunity and marched his army south, positioning himself as the defender of the oracle. The conflict lasted 10 years. Thousands died, and by the time it ended, Philip of Macedon had used the chaos to establish dominance over Greece, setting the stage for his son Alexander to conquer the known world, all because someone couldn't keep it in their pants a generation earlier. It was Easter Monday, 1282, in Palermo, Sicily. Drouet was a French soldier serving in the occupying French army, and there were celebrations happening outside the Church of the Holy Spirit. Everyone was in a good mood, wine flowing, music playing. So when Drouet saw a young Sicilian woman in the crowd, he approached her in what he thought was a casual, flirtatious way. But her husband did not think it was casual or flirtatious. Sicilians hated the French occupation. The French king, Charles of Anjou, had conquered Sicily years earlier, and his soldiers had a reputation for harassing local women. This wasn't just one drunk guy at a party. This was the culmination of years of resentment over French soldiers treating Sicilian women as available. So when the husband saw Drouet touching his wife, he didn't see a drunk soldier. He saw every French soldier who had ever disrespected a Sicilian woman. He stabbed Drouet. But then the crowd realized what had happened. Church bells started ringing, not for celebration, but as a call to arms. Within hours, Sicilians across Palermo were hunting down any French soldiers they could get their hands on. Anyone with a French accent was dragged from their homes. The massacre spread to other cities. Thousands of French were killed in what became known as the Sicilian Vespers. But Sicily needed protection from the French retaliation that was going to come. So they offered their allegiance to Peter III of Aragon, who happened to be married to the daughter of Sicily's previous king. This meant France and Aragon, two major Mediterranean powers, were now at war. And it wasn't a quick war. Naval battles raged across the Mediterranean, armies invaded back and forth, kingdoms switched sides, popes excommunicated people. The war lasted 20 years. Entire dynasties were reshaped. The balance of power in the Mediterranean permanently shifted, all because a French soldier got handsy at a church party and a husband's jealousy sparked a rebellion. Subscribe for part 2.